Welcome back to Saigon and another episode of This is Saigon. Now we're back in my kitchen because we're currently in lockdown here in Saigon, and we might have another 2 to 3 weeks where we're not really meant to be going out and about. So it just got me thinking there might be some little dishes that I learned along the way which might help you ease some of that pain for some of that fine food that all of you guys out there love and adore. So today we're going to take you back to one of my French favorites. It's called Coq Au Vin. Now the dish is actually a peasant dish, so they're taking a bit of chicken, a bit of wine, some carrots, some onions, some garlics, flinging it all into a pan and braising that off for about 2 hours. What you end up with is this beautiful, rich French peasantry dish which wows at dinner parties, and if you're locked up and looking for a bit of fine food on the budget, it's the one to go for. Let's get cracking on and let's cook some Coq Au Vin. So the nice thing about this dish, you can cook this with some real basic ingredients. We've got some chicken, some bacon, onion, carrots, mushrooms, a bit of wine, salt and pepper and garlic for our main stewy dish. And we're going to make a gratin potato or dauphinoise. Now if you don't have an oven, you can make that into a mashed potato, but all you need for that is some cream, some potatoes, a little bit of milk and some garlic. You're going to cook that all together, slice it up, and it's going to give you a really gratifying, heavy and juicy dish. Now we're not going to stop the cooking show today. This is going to be a full breeze through of all the cooking methods we're going to use. So we just cranked on the heat on our pan and we're going to grab a load of this wonderful bacon. Now it's better to have like the slightly thicker bacon if you can get your hands on it, but because we're in a bit of a lockdown right now, we've had to gone for a little bit of streaky. It's still going to have that right amount of fat content and a real nice flavour to it. In the pan, you notice I'm not going to put any oil in it, as the bacon here is a little bit more fatty than some of the stuff you get at home, which means you don't have to put quite as much oil and stuff into this dish. So once that's sizzling away, we're going to grab hold of a little bit of garlic over here, give this a crunch down to get rid of the outside shells of your garlic. I like to put, as most French people would for this dish, loads of garlic into it as much as possible. We don't have to do a proper cut on this, we're just going to do a slightly rough cut. Just to let all of those wonderful garlic juices come out into the pan. Whoop. This is going to take about 3 to 4 minutes, so in the meantime you can get your other parts of your dish ready to chuck in for your stew. So we just got some carrots. We have done a little cheeky peel beforehand, and again we're just looking for some nice rough cuts of our carrots just to give that stewy flavour and a little bit of chunk as we get later on into the dish. Now some of these look a little bit too big, so I'm just going to quarter those in. And there we go, that's our carrots done to one side. Next up, we've got some mushrooms. Again, normally they'll use like a button mushroom for this style of dish, but again, we haven't actually got that. So what we're going to do is we use some of the local Vietnamese variety. I think this is probably just going to lessen a little bit of that deep flavour, but the mushrooms here are pretty good. We've also gone for 2 varieties, just in case one wasn't quite as mushroomy as we actually needed to in the first place. Now just to one side, our bacon's starting to sizzle off nicely. All we're looking for is a little bit of browning. We have put that garlic in there. I like to have a bit of garlic in all my foods. I think it's the nicest thing, and it's really healthy. If we're looking for antioxidants, garlic's probably one of the biggest ones out there. So we can come back and we've got a big onion. This is probably an onion that's going to do us for a whole dish. We are going to use some smaller onions in this as well, so some little bell onions. If you've got shallots, you can use those, but basically any sweet little young onion you can use this dish. And again, it just is going to lift up that flavour ever so slightly. So here's our onions done to one side with our carrots. We're going to leave our beans for now, and whilst that's still cooking off, we still have a couple more minutes to go. So we're going to have a look at our potatoes that we're going to use for our dauphinoise. I love this machine. Now I bought this, I think it cost about 200,000. It's a little mandolin. Now if you've worked in the chef in this kitchen, you probably chopped off the tips of your fingers at one point with one of these bad boys. So there is a little device where when you get to the end of your sliced potatoes, you can use this. If you don't have to this, you're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way with a knife. So this, we can just slice our potatoes. As you get down to that lower level, just use your palm of your hand. It's a bit thicker, and you probably won't lose as much skin if you do catch yourself. And that's going to give a really nice thin potato right there. That bacon's definitely ready cooked off, so we're just going to give that a final little stir, just lap up all those garlic dishes. Take the lid off our pan here, and then we're going to pop that right into the pan. Now once we've got rid of the bacon, we can still use that oil and those lovely fat flavours in the bacon, but we are going to add a little bit of butter for our chicken. So we've got our chicken ready just here. We're going to add a little bit of seasoning to it. So here we've got some thyme, we've got a little bit of basil, and then we're going to chuck on some salt and pepper just to give it a right texture. Now you are going to put stock onto this, and depending on the stock you use, it is going to be quite salty in some cases. So try not to chuck quite as much salt on as you might do normally whilst you're doing this chicken. Giving that a really nice big mix up, mix that all around. And once that butter over here is mixed off, a couple more seconds, we're going to start adding that chicken in. Now another thing I like to add to this dish is loads of garlic. So throughout this we're going to have 3 or 4 different cloves, smash them up and chuck them into the pan, and that will give that chicken a really nice flavour. So that butter is just about melted off, and now we're going to add our chicken pieces into the pan, and you'll hear that really nice sizzle. What's really important here is not to overcrowd it. So depending on the size of your chicken legs, we're going to put maybe 3 to 4 pieces in per batch. Let that cook off, have a nice browning on both sides, and then we're going to add that into our bigger pot to the left hand side. So that's our first batch of chicken done. So all we're going to do is we're going to transfer this over to the pan. Oh, watch that butter as it really bites your face off. Flick that in there. And we're keeping that butter that we've already put in there. It's at quite a low heat, so that's not going to burn off. And then we can grab our next 4 pieces of chicken and get onto our prep of our other vegetables that we're going to use in this dish. So that's all our chicken and bacon done. So next up, we're just going to give this pan a quick wipe out, and we've got a little bit of burnt, and you can see that temperature is super hot. Chuck in some more fresh butter, and then we're going to add into our carrots, cook those for about 6 minutes, then put in our mushrooms and our onions and a little bit of garlic. Now just over here, our carrots are nearly cooked, and so what you're looking for is a little bit of translucency through there, so they're going to be ever so soft on the outside but not thoroughly cooked the whole way through. And once that's done, then we can grab our mushrooms, bung them into the pan, grab our onions, and then give that a good old stir. Get that butter and that garlic all the way through, and you can see all those flavors coming off and those smells. It smells absolutely divine. We'll give that a nice big stir. You see that getting coated with all of that butter, all that salt and pepper. Oh, it looks so good. So we're just looking over, so that is starting to cook. You can see the onions are starting to go a lovely little brown color. The carrots have definitely got a bit more translucency, and there's a little bit of a brown tinge on the edge of those mushrooms. So that's coming right. We're going to leave that for another 2 minutes, and then after that we can transfer that to the pan. Now we've got all of our chicken and our bacon pieces in here. So we're going to grab our wine. So today we're going to use whatever I could find. It's a Merlot from Sante. It looks like it's from Chile. You can use any wine. You can even use a white wine. So this dish, although it's called Coq Au Vin, actually there's variations of this all over Europe. So they use what kind of food they can get locally, just kind of like a beef stew, I guess. So you can use like an ale, you can use a red wine, a white wine, a Riesling, a Burgundy. The best wine you can actually choose for it is probably a Burgundy, a nice deep red. Today this Chilean Merlot is just going to suit fine, and we're just going to pour this in there, and about 3/4 of the bottle, which will leave us just enough for us to have some wine in our own glass a bit later on. Like all our vegetables are cooked out really nicely now. So what we're going to do is transfer that over to the pan and top that up. So we've got all of our vegetables, our chicken and our bacon, all in this pan here. It's topped up half with wine, and the rest of it we're going to use a Nor or a chicken stock. Obviously if you've cooked a chicken or use a whole cock, you can actually stew that down and get a really nice flavour, but we're going to cheat using a couple of spoonfuls, a bit of water, and here we go. We're going to pour this on and just top this up in our stew just here. Lastly, once that's all in, all we're going to do is we're going to get some tomato paste. Now this obviously is really strong. You can use fresh tomatoes if you want, but actually this is going to give it a real depth and flavour. What you do have to be careful about, it is less is more for sure. I've always found about a spoonful to a spoonful and a half is going to give you your perfect Coq Au Vin taste. If you go a little bit over, that richness does kind of come a little bit overbearing at times, and if you don't use enough, actually it's just going to taste a bit more like a chicken stew. So for this recipe we're just going to use 1.5 spoonfuls of this wonderful tomato paste. Whilst your chicken's simmering away, we're going to move on to our potato gratin or dauphinoise potato, depending where you're from. We're going to get a nice thick bit of butter again. You notice I'm going to probably use half a block of butter today. Chuck that into a nice pan, and then we can just grab this garlic that we prepared earlier, scoop that up and flick it into the pan and let that cook off. We're just going to put that at medium heat. We don't really need this to be crazy hot, and just wait for about 3 to 4 minutes for that butter to melt down. Then we're going to grab our whipping cream that we've used today. Obviously, they normally recommend like a double cream, but actually the difference between a whipping cream and a double cream is very, very minute. They've both got a fat content of about 35%, and it goes really, really well, believe it or not, with this dish. So that's starting to cook off really, really nicely now, and in it goes. Here we go, just pouring some lovely cream into that. Next up, we're going to grab our milk. We've had to use our Avena milk today, which probably isn't ideal. If you can get fresh milk, it's definitely going to be better. And just pour that inside, in with that cream. And we're just going to give that a lovely little stir to get that all going on with that butter and with that garlic. Delish. So once that's cooking up to one side, we can grab our potatoes that we've cut up here, and then what we're going to do is just add those into that sauce. You'll see this is starting to bubble, so that's a perfect temperature, and we're just going to pop these in, and we're trying to separate all these potatoes up. So just be a little careful, because what we want to do is have all of that wonderful cream and garlic flavor going throughout the potato, not just on one or two. There we go, chuck all of those in, and then we can just give this a lovely stir and start getting all that creamy and rich goodness to go throughout these potatoes here. So our potato gratin is just coming to the end. It's been in here for 12 minutes now. And you just try a little bit of potato, and that's right, it's just breaking up very, very nicely. So that's ready to come off the heat. So we'll knock this down, and then we're going to grab our little tub and start laying up our potato gratin. The only problem you're gonna sometimes have with these cake tins, especially these cheaply made ones from China, again, I think I got this for about $4, is sometimes they've got a bit of a leak to it. So all you're gonna do is just put some, on the outside, put some tin foil just to keep all those creamy flavors inside. And now we can grab our gratin, that's cooled down enough, and we can start layering our potato inside of this dish. Those flavors coming off there are absolutely amazing. So we're just going to keep on stacking up these layers just in a little circle. Now if you were working in a really nice kitchen, they used to make you do this by hand, layer by layer, so you had like a rosette or a lovely flower effect. What I used to do is just bung it all in and make the last 2 layers look pretty, because that's all the chef could ever see, so you wouldn't get a frying pan flying at your head from across the kitchen. So there we go, we're just finishing up the potato now. That looks good enough to me. And we can just leave that to one side. It will still be cooking because it's nice and hot, and then in about an hour and a half we can fling that in the ovens once the Coq Au Vin has got another 30 minutes to go, and then that will be ready at the same time. So we've just come back. That's about an hour and a half this has been cooking for. We're just going to chuck our dauphinoise potato into the oven and cook that off for about 30 minutes. In the meantime, we can get our beans ready. Now this is a really, really simple way of doing a lovely bean dish. We're going to take our beans, we're going to chuck some butter into the pan, cook that off for just about 2 or 3 minutes with some garlic, put in some chicken stock and bring that to the boil, and then we can fling our beans in. So we're just going to stir that around, and then just depending on how you like your beans, whether you like them to have a bit more crunch or less, I'm going to cook mine for between 8 to 10 minutes, depending on how thick that bean is. And once that's cooked off, and that's starting to look really nice now, it's been about 10 minutes, and we just grab a bean, give it a little snap, and that's definitely cooked off. So we'll take that off the high heat and then pop that to one side, drain those off in a couple of minutes. So we're just going to look at our Coq Au Vin now, and that is coming to perfection. Now if you want to check to see how big the sauce or how nice the sauce is cooked down, or whether you need to reduce it or not, just grab a metal spoon and just dip it in. Now if it's coating and not falling off the back of that spoon, that means that it's cooked to perfection. So you can take that off the heat and then start getting your plates ready to prepare your dishes. We've got our wonderful Coq Au Vin, our dauphinoise potato and our green beans. I'm going to grab a dish, and here we go. Grab a little bit of that dauphinoise potato, pop that on the plate. We're going to grab our green beans, give these a little shake off to get some of that stock off, and lastly grab 2 of those really lovely chicken breasts As you can see, we're using a pair of tongs here, but that meat is already falling apart. Now grab a few bits of those carrots, those wonderful mushrooms, a bit of bacon, and lastly, grab a lovely big spoonful, add that on top of the dish, and there you go. Voila, Coq Au Vin, Sam style. Good luck, stay safe in Saigon, and we hope to see you on the next episode of This is Saigon.